Why have all verified paleontological discoveries remained strictly confined to the ancient Stonesfield slate deposits of Oxfordshire? How can scientists reconstruct an entire massive theropod when only scattered teeth, vertebrae, and pelvic fragments survive? What precise anatomical adaptations enabled this heavy reptile to sprint rapidly and ambush prey across dense floodplains? Why did its highly specialized serrated teeth evolve specifically for effortlessly slicing through tough muscle tissue and connective fibers? How did early researchers accidentally misidentify dozens of unrelated theropod specimens under one confusing taxonomic genus name? What extraordinary biomechanical bite force allowed this carnivore to completely dominate Middle Jurassic coastal ecosystems and hunt giants? How did the formal 1,824 scientific designation of this creature establish the foundational framework for all dinosaur research? Don't miss what comes next in this story. Watch to the very end.
Hello, I'm Jonny Dony, and welcome to a channel dedicated to dinosaur documentaries grounded in real paleontological science. Today we follow Megalosaurus in shadows of the first named crown, tracing its solitary reign across ancient coastal floodplains. The complete soundtrack streams on Spotify and Apple Music, with one randomly chosen subscriber winning $100 monthly. YouTube monetization has grown highly unpredictable lately, so this channel relies entirely on direct viewer support to keep producing. Becoming a Patreon sponsor ensures every single contribution directly helps me produce the next dinosaur film, link below. Please like this video and subscribe to enter the monthly giveaway. Now, let us step into the ancient past.
Shadows of the first named crown. Time is the longest distance between two places. Tennessee Williams. Jurassic Floodplain. Mist settles across the ancient basin as dawn breaks over the Stonesfield slate deposits. 16 million years of slow accumulation shaped this Oxfordshire terrain. The Middle Jurassic epoch breathes with quiet stability. Subtropical humidity clings to every exposed rock face. Warm air moves steadily through dense coniferous canopies lining the river channels. Seasonal rainfall sustains a predictable hydrological cycle across the lowlands. Ancient waterways carve shallow corridors through the compacted sediment. The landscape maintains a delicate thermal balance throughout the year. Fine silt layers record the rhythmic advance of coastal tides. Marine transgression cycles regularly deposit mineral-rich mud across the terrestrial margins. These geological processes construct a complex habitat matrix over millennia. Stable stratigraphic sequences preserve the environmental conditions of this era. A contemporary archosaur drifts along the water margin without disturbing the surface. The floodplain supports a quiet network of interconnected biological niches. Dense cycad groves anchor the soil near the shifting banks. This ecosystem thrives on consistent moisture and steady sunlight. Paleontological evidence confirms that this entire landscape remains strictly localized. The Bithonian stage deposits capture a unique southern English geography. Oxfordshire boundaries contain the only verified remnants of this ancient world. Isolation shaped the evolutionary trajectory of every resident organism. Morning light filters through towering conifers and illuminates the damp undergrowth. A small synapsid navigates the tangled root systems with careful precision. The forest floor accumulates layers of decaying organic matter each season. This natural decomposition fuels the nutrient cycles of the region. River currents slow as they approach the coastal lagoon boundaries. Suspended sediments settle into thick blankets that harden over centuries. The transition zone between freshwater and marine environments creates diverse habitats. Salinity gradients dictate which plant communities establish along the shoreline. Wind sweeps across the open mudflats, carrying fine dust particles inland. The atmosphere remains heavily saturated during these transitional afternoon hours. Evaporation rates balance the continuous influx of precipitation across the basin. This hydrological equilibrium sustains the broader environmental stability. A pier theropod silhouette crosses the distant ridge against the fading sun. The terrain offers extensive cover for any creature seeking refuge. Ginkgo trees stand resilient near the eroded river cutbanks. Their broad leaves capture the final warmth of the day. Twilight descends as the temperature gradually drops across the open plains. The geology records these daily cycles within successive sedimentary bands. Ancient soils lock moisture deep beneath the surface crust. Underground reservoirs prepare the landscape for the next seasonal shift. Night brings a profound stillness to the submerged channels and banks. Invertebrate populations emerge from their burrows to process the detritus. Early mammals navigate the dense undergrowth with heightened sensory awareness. This hidden activity sustains the foundation of the food web. Lunar cycles govern the tidal rhythms along the adjacent marine margins. High water pushes saline currents further inland during specific phases. Freshwater systems temporarily mix with oceanic flows across the delta. These periodic exchanges enrich the mineral content of the floodplain. Atmospheric pressure shifts signal the approach of heavier seasonal storms across the basin. Cloud formations gather above the distant mountain ranges. With steady momentum, the impending precipitation will refill the shallow basins and tributaries rapidly. Water remains the primary architect of this highly dynamic environment. Storm waters carve new pathways through the soft alluvial deposits. Erosion exposes deeper stratigraphic layers that document ancient climatic transitions. The landscape continuously reconfigures itself in response to natural forces. These relentless geological processes shape the enduring structure of the terrain. Sediment accumulation continues at a measured pace across the entire basin. Tectonic subsidence gradually lowers the regional topography over vast timescales. The floodplain adapts to these slow but irreversible structural adjustments. Geological forces dictate the permanent boundaries of this ancient world. Stratigraphic evidence proves this Middle Jurassic ecosystem remains strictly confined to Oxfordshire deposits. Record your analysis of this geographic isolation in the comments below. We ask you to like and subscribe as we continue this investigation. The next chapter reveals how a massive bipedal predator balanced its heavy frame.
Bipedal species. The heavy tail lifts first, establishing a rigid counterweight against the forward mass. Two powerful hind limbs lock into position across the damp substrate. The bipedal stance anchors the entire frame with deliberate stability. Ground contact shifts instantly from static rest to forward readiness. Adults consistently reach 9 meters in total length when measured from snout to tail tip. This substantial frame demands precise weight distribution during every stride. The species maintains an upright posture that clears the forest floor efficiently across open terrain. A mature individual steps carefully past a browsing Cetiosaurus, the massive sauropodomorph barely acknowledging the passing predator. The stark size contrast defines the floodplain hierarchy without direct confrontation. Both creatures navigate the same humid corridor with practiced daily indifference. The rigid vertebral column transmits propulsion directly from the hips, eliminating unnecessary lateral flexion. Each stride transfers kinetic energy forward with minimal waste. Structural stability governs the entire locomotor system. Forward momentum becomes a mechanical certainty. Proportionally short, forelimbs rest close to the ribcage, yet retain fully functional grasping mechanics. The digits flex with surprising dexterity during routine maintenance. Reduced dimensions minimize rotational inertia during rapid directional changes. Form strictly follows mechanical necessity here. Isolated teeth and scattered pelvic fragments offer only partial glimpses of the complete architecture. Researchers reconstruct the missing segments through extensive comparative modeling. The fragmentary record demands careful interpretation across every recovered element. Scientific deduction fills the geological gaps. A distant Rhamphorhynchus drifts overhead, casting a fleeting shadow across the predator's broad back. The aerial reptile provides a quiet reference for terrestrial scale. Both organisms share the same atmospheric layer without interaction. The canopy absorbs the passing silhouette. Early developmental stages accelerate rapidly through critical growth phases, shedding vulnerability within a single season. Juveniles stretch their limbs daily, matching the expanding dimensions of the floodplain. The skeletal framework adapts to increasing mass with structural precision. The body plan prioritizes sustained terrestrial navigation over specialized defensive armor. Pneumatic cavities within the vertebrae reduce overall skeletal weight without sacrificing structural integrity. A lighter frame enables consistent pursuit across uneven terrain. Efficiency dictates the evolutionary blueprint. A small multituberculate mammal scurries beneath a fallen ginkgo branch, entirely unnoticed by the towering predator. The size disparity emphasizes the sheer physical dominance of the theropod. Both creatures occupy the same microhabitat without crossing paths. Voo. Mature specimens weigh approximately 1 metric ton, a mass that demands careful weight transfer during locomotion. The hindquarters drive forward while the tail maintains equilibrium. Balance becomes a continuous calculation rather than a static state. Physics governs every movement. A peer theropod passes through the distant tree line, maintaining a respectful territorial distance across the open basin. The two solitary hunters recognize each other without engagement. Spatial separation prevents unnecessary energy expenditure. Coexistence relies on calculated avoidance. Muscular attachments along the femur contract in steady rhythm, driving the heavy frame steadily forward. The powerful spine absorbs ground shock while preserving forward trajectory. Each heavy footfall registers with deliberate impact across the dense floodplain soil. A contemporary crocodilian rests motionless near the water margin, observing the terrestrial giant with quiet, ancient patience. The aquatic reptile remains entirely passive as the larger predator passes. Two distinct lineages share the shoreline without direct conflict. The tail sweeps gently behind the advancing form, stabilizing the final stride across the clearing. This defining counterbalance transforms raw mass into controlled terrestrial grace. The bipedal silhouette moves steadily forward with unwavering mechanical certainty. How did this massive predator maintain perfect stability across uneven terrain? We confirmed that rigid spines and heavy tails solved the balance challenge. Like and subscribe so we can continue funding precise fossil reconstructions. The next chapter reveals how elongated foot bones enabled explosive cursorial speed.
Before we return to the story, please allow me one brief aside. I honestly remain unsure how much longer new films will keep arriving on this YouTube channel, so please subscribe to my Telegram channel. That is the most reliable way to stay updated and watch the newest videos first. My official merch and signature collectible dinosaur toys are also available on Amazon. You will find every link waiting in the description below. I sincerely apologize for this interruption, and I promise not to interrupt again. Now, back to the ancient coastlines.
Clawed strides. Elongated metatarsal segments lock into rigid levers beneath the heavy footpad. Each stride transfers stored tendon energy directly into forward thrust. The lower limb architecture minimizes rotational drag during rapid acceleration. Ground contact remains precise across the damp substrate. Robust femoral attachments anchor massive extensor bundles along the upper thigh. These muscular pillars contract with synchronized precision to launch the heavy frame. The rigid vertebral column stabilizes every explosive launch phase. Forward momentum builds without compromising structural balance. Pneumatic cavities hollow the femur and tibia without sacrificing load-bearing strength. A small synapsid scurries past the advancing limbs, emphasizing body mass scale of the predator. The skeletal frame sheds unnecessary mass while retaining impact resistance. Engineering optimizes weight distribution across the entire hindquarter. Stride length expands dramatically as the ankle joint reaches full extension. Efficient terrestrial cursorial movement requires precise timing between opposing limbs. The heavy tail remains elevated, acting as a dynamic counterweight. Every step covers more ground with minimal metabolic cost. Curved keratin claws bite deeply into the saturated floodplain soil. Secure traction prevents lateral slippage during sudden directional changes. The broad pedal structure distributes immense weight across fragile root networks. Ferns bend and snap beneath the advancing pace. A pier theropod tracks distant prey along the ridge, demonstrating contrasting limb mechanics. The primary animal decelerates by planting the rear digits firmly. The heavily ossified tail sweeps sideways to counteract forward inertia. Braking maneuvers require exact muscular coordination across the hindquarters. Robust hindlimb proportions and elongated metatarsals indicate efficient terrestrial cursorial capabilities. These structural traits support rapid acceleration necessary for ambushing prey. Dense prehistoric floodplain terrain rewards such specialized mechanical design. The architecture transforms raw mass into controlled velocity. A browsing sauropodomorph illustrates alternative jaw morphology while feeding on cycad fronds. The predator conserves energy between high-intensity pursuit sequences. Metabolic reserves sustain the frame during extended tracking intervals. Pneumatic skeletal elements reduce oxygen demands during prolonged movement. Ankle articulation locks securely when navigating uneven root mounds and fallen timber. The metatarsophalangeal joint absorbs shock without transferring stress upward through the limb. Conifer needles scatter across the freshly cleared path. Each deliberate step maintains mechanical certainty over unpredictable ground. A contemporary crocodilian wades through a shallow lagoon nearby, displaying alternative limb deployment. The predator shifts weight smoothly across the lateral pelvic girdle. Hip sockets rotate to maintain alignment during tight turns. Lateral stability prevents catastrophic joint dislocation. The ossified bone structure creates an inflexible bridge along the midsection. This rigid backbone couples pelvic rotation directly to hind limb propulsion. Ginkgo leaves drift onto the damp earth below. The structural design channels power exclusively into forward thrust. A pier pterosaur glides silently overhead, exploiting aerial thermals for effortless travel. The terrestrial hunter relies on ground-based locomotion for pursuit. Visual focus remains locked on the target horizon. Neck muscles stabilize the skull against stride vibrations. Elastic tendons along the ankle store kinetic energy during each landing phase. Recoil mechanisms release stored tension to initiate the next stride. The mechanical advantage multiplies with every completed cycle. Continuous movement becomes a rhythmic transfer of momentum. Muscle fibers contract in rapid succession along the entire posterior chain. The heavy frame surges forward with explosive, calculated velocity across the clearing. Ferns flatten instantly beneath the sudden driving force. The architecture delivers lethal speed from a stationary stance. The heavy tail arcs sharply to correct the final pivot angle. Clawed digits lock into position as the stride completes its arc. Every anatomical element synchronizes perfectly for the next pursuit. Locomotion remains an uninterrupted cycle of controlled power. While previous chapters mapped the environment and basic posture, this segment reveals the precise limb mechanics driving forward motion. We traced how pneumatic bones and elongated metatarsals convert heavy mass into efficient speed. Like and subscribe to support our ongoing research. The next chapter examines how specialized teeth process massive prey.
Carnivore Diet. Serrated enamel catches the morning light as the massive skull lowers toward a fresh kill. Recurved, laterally compressed teeth feature distinct serrations optimized for slicing through muscle tissue and connective fibers, reflecting highly specialized carnivorous feeding mechanisms. This specialized dentition defines every successful feeding event. The heavy jaws clamp firmly against the heavy, struggling carcass, while powerful neck muscles drive downward. Each deliberate bite separates dense tissue from the underlying bone structure. The obligate carnivore requires substantial daily caloric intake to sustain its massive frame. A juvenile Cetiosaurus remains the primary target across these humid river corridors every single day. Herd defenses scatter quickly when the solitary hunter emerges from the dense coniferous cover. Successful predation events remain rare, but sustain the entire metabolic cycle. Strategic foraging patterns minimize unnecessary energy expenditure across the sprawling floodplain each morning. The predator tracks subtle ground disturbances near vital water sources with deliberate focus. Patience becomes the ultimate weapon in a landscape governed by strict caloric economics. Isotopic signatures preserved in ancient bone consistently demonstrate elevated trophic positioning within complex ecosystems. The species consistently occupy the absolute apex of regional Middle Jurassic food webs. Every consumed vertebrate reinforced this dominant ecological hierarchy across multiple successive generations. Lateral jaw compression allows precise shearing motions rather than simple crushing force during meals. The specialized dental row efficiently strips tough connective tissue from heavy sauropod limbs. Feeding mechanics directly mirror the precise biomechanical demands of processing massive prey items. A distant pterosaur silhouette drifts above the canopy without disturbing the ongoing feeding sequence. Contemporary archosaurs quietly recognize the established territorial boundaries surrounding fresh carcasses daily. Scavenging opportunities remain strictly regulated by overwhelming physical dominance and acute spatial awareness. Seasonal drought conditions gradually reduce active hunting success across the rapidly drying basin. Available water sources quickly concentrate vulnerable herbivores near shrinking mud channels each afternoon. The massive predator carefully adapts its daily routine to exploit these forced aggregations. Coprolite analysis confirms regular consumption of ornithischian herbivores alongside larger sauropod juveniles each season. The highly diverse diet reflects opportunistic foraging across multiple distinct ecological niches. Resource flexibility consistently ensures survival during unpredictable annual climatic fluctuations across the epoch. Carrion detection relies heavily on highly acute olfactory receptors scanning the humid air continuously. The massive frame moves deliberately toward freshly decaying remains scattered near riverbanks. Scavenging activities reliably supplement active hunting when severe seasonal scarcity limits fresh kills. Ginkgo leaves carpet the ancient forest floor as the predator navigates familiar territory corridors daily. Constant patrol routes establish highly efficient hunting circuits across established territorial ranges consistently. Spatial memory actively optimizes daily energy allocation in highly resource-limited environments permanently. A small synapsid scurries across exposed routes while the massive hunter passes overhead slowly. Minor ecosystem inhabitants operate entirely beneath the constant attention of apex predators. The ancient food web functions through interconnected survival strategies at every trophic level. Muscle fiber separation continues steadily as the intensive feeding sequence reaches its final stages. The robust skull anchors firmly while specialized dentition completes deep tissue extraction efficiently. Critical nutrient acquisition directly supports sustained growth and long-term reproductive readiness annually. Floodplain corridors remain permanently altered by the constant passage of large terrestrial carnivores daily. Trophically driven regulation consistently maintains herbivore population balance across the entire regional ecological matrix. Crucial ecological stability fundamentally depends entirely on these consistent predation pressures annually. The solitary predator successfully completes its daily caloric requirements. The next chapter explains why this apex predator completely avoided group movement. Our feeding research directly connects these solitary habits to territorial survival. Like and subscribe to follow our ongoing investigations. Chapter 5 reveals isolated trackways that prove total independence.
Absent-haired. The solitary adult navigates the dense conifer undergrowth, leaving isolated tracks across the damp floodplain substrate. Synchronized herd patterns never emerge from these scattered impressions. Each heavy footprint marks a strictly independent journey through established and permanent territory boundaries. Mature individuals consistently defend prime resource zones from intruding competitors across the sunlit landscape. A low vocal rumble echoes between towering ginkgo trunks. The deep sound establishes clear territorial boundaries without unnecessary physical confrontation or immediate energy loss. Trackway distributions reveal exclusively isolated movement patterns across the entire region. Early researchers initially misidentified numerous unrelated theropod specimens under this single genus, creating extensive taxonomic confusion. Modern phylogenetic analysis finally delivered definitive and accurate resolution for all scattered fragments. Juvenile offspring remain close to maternal figures only during brief early developmental windows. Once physically independent, young animals disperse rapidly into completely unclaimed seasonal ranges. This swift separation effectively minimizes constant direct competition for localized prey concentrations and resources. Solitary existence consistently maximizes individual access to hunting grounds during fluctuating seasonal periods. The landscape naturally supports scattered herbivore populations rather than dense migratory herds. Independent navigation proves far more efficient than cooperative hunting strategies across vast ancient floodplains. Seasonal environmental shifts trigger brief convergence between mature adults across the ancient central basin. A complex courtship display unfolds beneath the low-hanging conifer branches. Rhythmic acoustic calls signal readiness to mate without prolonged physical proximity or lingering attachment. Once paired, bonded individuals synchronize their movements for only a single breeding cycle. The dominant male patrols the immediate perimeter, while the female carefully prepares the ground. This temporary alliance serves strictly reproductive purposes before permanent separation occurs. The female excavates a shallow depression carefully lined with dry ferns and cycad fronds. She deposits a modest clutch of thick-shelled eggs directly into the prepared scrape. Maternal instincts focus entirely on immediate incubation duties across the basin. Brooding adults maintain a vigilant posture over the developing embryos throughout the warmest months. Ambient heat from decomposing vegetation carefully supplements critical natural metabolic processes. The solitary parent rarely abandons the site until active hatching finally begins. Vocal exchanges between the nesting site and the entire surrounding territory remain strictly minimal. Unnecessary acoustic signals quickly attract opportunistic competitors like Eustreptospondylus. Strategic silence becomes a critical survival strategy during this highly vulnerable developmental window. The hatchlings breach their calcified shells simultaneously, revealing damp forms completely ready for immediate movement. The attentive parent guides them toward dense sheltered undergrowth away from open waterways. Early survival depends entirely on rapid mobility and natural camouflage. Provisioning occurs briefly as the mother retrieves small vertebrate prey from nearby ancient thickets. Each juvenile practices independent hunting strikes against fleeing invertebrates across the damp forest floor. The learning curve remains remarkably steep and completely unforgiving. Within mere weeks, the maternal bond dissolves entirely. As young animals venture into completely separate ranges, the social structure demands absolute independence once basic survival skills are fully acquired. No lingering attachment persists between parent and offspring. Isolated juveniles navigate the winding floodplain corridors entirely alone, establishing personal territories through careful daily exploration. They actively avoid dense aggregations of massive herbivores like Cetiosaurus. Solitary navigation ensures optimal resource allocation across the ancient environment. The final dispersal completes the solitary life cycle as young adults successfully claim vacant territories. A low territorial call echoes across the quiet basin, signaling a new era of independent existence. The absent herd persists through deliberate and lasting separation. Fossil trackways prove these massive predators navigated ancient floodplains in complete isolation. We invite you to analyze how solitary behavior shaped their survival below. Like and subscribe to support our ongoing documentary series. The next chapter reveals devastating bite forces and brutal territorial combat.
Apex Predator. A rival Megalosaurus steps into the contested clearing, blocking the dominant path. The two bulls lock jaws across the damp substrate, muscles strain against each other as the older male drives forward. The rival yields the ground after a heavy push. Eustreptospondylus lunges from the cycad cover, targeting the exposed flank. The dominant theropod pivots and clamps his jaws onto the attacker's neck. The sudden strike breaks the rival's momentum completely. The smaller predator retreats into the ferns. Coastal shallows conceal a waiting Liopleurodon beneath the murky tide line. The heavy predator wades in, unaware of the submerged jaws snapping upward. Massive teeth sink into his foreleg, anchoring him to the mud. He wrenches free with a violent twist. And a Metriacanthosaurus emerges from the conifer shadows, seeking to claim the kill. The dominant male meets the charge head-on, delivering a crushing bite to the shoulder. The impact sends the challenger stumbling backward across the stones. The rival limps away. Another Megalosaurus challenges the established territory boundary near the riverbank. Biomechanical analysis demonstrates exceptional bite force capabilities that dominate Middle Jurassic ecosystems. The defending bull maintains his footing through sheer mass. The intruder finally retreats from the prime hunting grounds. The shoreline ambush repeats when a second Liopleurodon breaches the surface. Jaws clamp onto the theropod's ankle, dragging him toward deeper currents. He counters with a powerful tail sweep, striking the marine reptile squarely. The blow forces an immediate release. A younger Megalosaurus attempts to seize a recently secured carcass. The veteran bull intercepts the advance, locking his powerful jaws across the rival's snout. The sustained pressure drives the challenger backward into the cycads. The dispute ends with a decisive shove. A competing Magnosaurus circles the floodplain, testing the dominant male's defenses. The confrontation escalates into a rapid exchange of biting strikes. The defender lands a precise counterattack across the intruder's ribs. The rival yields to the superior combat advantage. Tidal retreat exposes a shallow pool where a third Liopleurodon lies trapped. The theropod seizes the opportunity, delivering a forceful strike to the exposed flank. The marine reptile thrashes wildly, snapping its jaws in retaliation. The defender steps back. A defensive Shunnosaurus swings its spiked tail, aiming to protect its herd. The predator anticipates the strike, rolling beneath the lethal arc. He drives his weight into the herbivore's hindquarters, forcing a retreat. The clash secures his dominance over the zone. The final territorial Megalosaurus arrives at dusk, demanding passage through the valley. The two rivals engage in a brutal pushing match across the stones. The veteran maintains his ground, absorbing each heavy impact. The challenger withdraws for the night. A fourth Liopleurodon surfaces near the river mouth, hunting in the shallows. The dominant predator wades forward, clamping his jaws onto the creature's dorsal ridge. The marine reptile dives abruptly, attempting to drag him under. The theropod releases his grip. Another Eustreptospondylus attempts an ambush near the conifer line. The veteran detects the movement and strikes first, sinking his teeth into the attacker's forelimb. The sudden assault breaks the rival's offensive posture completely. The wounded predator flees. The last rival, Megalosaurus, challenges the apex position at dawn. They lock jaws in a grueling test of endurance and strength. The dominant male delivers a final, decisive shove. The defeated bull turns away, acknowledging the hierarchy. A final Liopleurodon rises from the coastal waters, seeking easy prey. The theropod meets the threat head-on, driving his powerful jaws into the exposed neck. The strike is enough to deter the marine hunter. The survivor stands firm. While previous chapters detailed our isolated anatomy, this sequence proves active combat, secured absolute dominance. We verified that exceptional bite force outmatched every coastal challenger. Subscribe and like to preserve these scientific reconstructions. Chapter 7 traces how those final struggles fossilized into the foundation of paleontology.
Fossil lineage. The heavy hindlimb settles firmly onto exposed mudstone, tracking a rapidly shifting water table. Dense conifer stands thin out across the retreating floodplain margins. The solitary predator adjusts his stride to match the shrinking habitat corridors. Seasonal drought dictates a strict conservation of energy. A contemporary archosaur drifts quietly along the distant tree line, undisturbed by the shifting terrain. The large theropod pauses, tracking the subtle changes in wind direction. Resource scarcity forces deliberate conservation of caloric energy. Survival now demands patience over explosive pursuit. Emerging carnivorous competitors gradually encroach upon established territories, fracturing the once stable ecological matrix. Overlapping hunting grounds trigger silent standoffs across the drying substrate. The seasoned individual yields contested zones to conserve vital strength. Adaptation quietly replaces territorial dominance. Scavenging routines replace systematic hunting as large herbivore populations decline across the altered basin. The heavy skull lowers to investigate wind-borne carrion scents. Isolated feeding events sustain a fading lineage through harsh transitional seasons. The ecosystem demands a fundamental behavioral shift. Muscle mass diminishes beneath the weathering hide as metabolic reserves dwindle during prolonged dry spells. The rigid vertebral column sags slightly with each labored step. A bleached skeleton marks the resting place of a fallen contemporary. Mortality claims the basin's oldest resident. The final bull collapses near a receding river channel, his massive frame settling into the damp substrate. Heavy breathing slows as the surrounding canopy offers scant relief. The lineage's last dominant individual surrenders to inevitable physiological exhaustion. The struggle ends without ceremony. Carrion beetles and early mammals quickly converge upon the motionless carcass, initiating the natural decomposition cycle. Small scavengers navigate the shadowed undergrowth with practiced efficiency. The fallen predator becomes a nutrient source for the surviving community. Ecological continuity relies on this quiet transfer. Rainfall returns to the floodplain, washing mineral-rich sediments across the exposed remains. Silt gradually accumulates over the heavy pelvic girdle and scattered ribs. Geological processes quietly seal the specimen within the ancient mudstone matrix. The Earth reclaims the biological architecture. Millions of years compress the buried remains into a dense, mineralized bone bed. Pressure and groundwater chemistry replace organic tissue with crystalline stone. The recovered vertebrae retain their original structural geometry beneath the heavy overburden. Geological time preserves the anatomical blueprint. A quarry worker's hammer strikes the Oxfordshire bedrock, exposing a fragment of ancient pelvic architecture. The unexpected discovery captures immediate scientific attention across European academic circles. Detailed comparative studies begin reconstructing the lost morphology. Modern paleontology takes its first definitive step. William Buckland formally describes the specimen in 1824, establishing a rigorous taxonomic framework for vertebrate classification. The designation anchors subsequent research into Mesozoic evolutionary biology. Researchers utilize this foundational reference to calibrate morphological parameters. The naming process creates an enduring scientific legacy. Phylogenetic analyses consistently validate the historical classification, mapping basal tetanurine traits across divergent theropod branches. The preserved jaw fragments reveal specialized feeding mechanics. Modern comparative methodologies rely upon these early British specimens. The lineage's anatomical parameters guide contemporary stratigraphic reconstruction. Pure sauropodomorph herds once browsed the coniferous margins, shaping the vegetative structure across these ancient floodplains. The preserved trackways document solitary movement patterns distinct from later social theropods. Stratigraphic dating methodologies now correlate these isolated impressions. The ecological matrix remains fully documented. Contemporary pterosaurs cast fleeting shadows over the stabilized sedimentary layers, navigating coastal air currents without disturbance. The fossil record captures this quiet coexistence across multiple geological horizons. Researchers trace evolutionary trajectories through these overlapping. Our 7-part exploration of Megalosaurus concludes with its lasting scientific legacy. We invite you to consider how these fragmentary remains shaped modern paleontology. Please like and subscribe to support our ongoing research into prehistoric ecosystems. Explore our full documentary series to uncover more ancient evolutionary stories.
Our Shadows of the First Named Crown journey concludes here, and I am Jonny Dony. We trace the solitary footsteps of Megalosaurus across ancient floodplains, uncovering the origins of paleontology. Please subscribe and comment to share which ecological shift surprised you most today. My Patreon community receives every new dinosaur documentary a full week before YouTube, link below. Sincere appreciation extends to every channel sponsor whose steady support makes these careful productions possible. In just a few seconds, 2 equally fascinating dinosaur documentaries will appear on your screen. Choose your next prehistoric adventure and keep exploring the fossil record together.